In the news today, it appears that Operation Regurgitation is back on track at Disney Studios. After Snow White bombed harder than the Enola Gray, many held out hope that the mouse had given up on taking their old IPs out to the back lot and giving them the old R. Kelly special. Sadly, that proved not to be the case when Lilo and Stitch released just 2 months later to financial success. Thus, longtime Disney fans can now look forward to more disingenuous professions of reverence while the Mouse House simultaneously handles their beloved IPs like Chunk handled that water bottle.
I got it! I got it! I got it! I don't got it.
You klutz!
Hope it's not a deposit bottle.
News of this development was met with a collective
Hey, Pumbaa! Not in front of the kids.
Oh, sorry.
So for those unfamiliar with Operation Regurgitation, it's a little nickname I came up with for Disney and what they're currently doing to their own IPs, where they put on this facade of caring about the thing, but then actually disrespecting the thing in all the most important ways. It may actually come as a surprise to some of the youngins out there, but creativity and innovation used to be hallmarks of the Disney brand.
Well, I feel sheepish.
To quote Walt Disney himself, "I don't like to repeat successes. I like to go on to other things." He also said, "Around here, however, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths." Or, perhaps my favorite quote, "By nature, I'm an experimenter. To this day, I don't believe in sequels. I can't follow popular cycles. I have to move on to new things." So with the success of Mickey, I was determined to diversify. However, as anyone with an IQ north of 5 and a pulse could likely tell you, creativity and innovation have long since died at the Disney Studios. However, it wasn't an instant death. It was more the death of 1,000 cuts. And that got me thinking, where was the first cut? Was there a genesis point? After doing a little research, I think I found it. It happened between August of 2009 and March of 2010. In an 8-month period where 3 particular things happened that started the ball rolling that I think have slowly but surely destroyed all creativity and innovation at Disney. So what were those 3 things? In March of 2009 was when Disney completed the purchase of Marvel. Then, in December of 2009 was when The Princess and the Frog was released. Finally, in March of 2010 was when Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland was released. I think each one of these things contributed to destroying the way that Disney used to go about creating properties, the way that they used to do things, and it has slowly led to the death of creativity and innovation at Disney. Now, I'm going to cover each one in detail, so let's start with Marvel.
Dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same. And now it's here.
The interesting thing is that when Disney bought Marvel, they somehow gave a new definition to the securities fraud term pump and dump. For Disney, the term pump and dump means pump it full of virtue signals, dump it on the overworked CGI team, and then vomit it out to the public. Yay. Prior to 2009, there were 5 MCU films. The first Iron Man film, The Incredible Hulk, the second Iron Man film, the first Thor film, and then Captain America, the first Avenger. After the purchase, there have been 28 feature films. 31 if you count the 3 Spider-Man films, but those are distributed by Sony. Now, if that were the only factor, that would be one thing. However, the problem is there are also approximately 28 shows as well. So 28 feature films and approximately 28 shows comes to a grand total of about 2 shows and 2 films a year for the past 15 years. Now, to add to that, if Disney had only purchased Marvel, that would also be another thing. However, that isn't where they stopped, as we all are dreadfully aware. A couple of years later, they purchased Star Wars. A couple of years after that, they purchased Fox. Now, looking at all this got me to go back to the beginning of Bob Iger's tenure as the CEO. And actually in 2005, one of the first things he did when he became the CEO was to remove the strategic planning unit. Now, I don't know exactly what the strategic planning unit did. And even reading this article, you're only getting a surface view of what was going on. But one of the highlights of it is that they said that the strategic planning unit was something that a lot of people chafed under trying to get things produced. That seems to be one of the biggest problems at Disney now, is that nobody's chafing to get anything produced because they will literally make any old piece of crap that anybody wants to make. The funny image that I actually have now of that room, of where the strategic planning, wherever it was in Disney, I just imagine Bob Iger went and ripped the name card off of that and threw up Content Mill on top of it. And that is where he keeps all these IPs that he buys. He bought Marvel and chucked it in that room, and he bought Star Wars and he chucked it in that room, and he bought Fox and he chucked it in that room, and he said, "Who needs a plan when you own all the IPs in the world? Just go grab one of my toys and have at it." The funny thing is when Bob Iger left for a little while a couple of years ago and then he came back, one of the first things he said is that they were going to start to focus on quality over quantity. Now, we all know that's bullshit, but the funny thing is, it is also an admission that they were just focusing on quantity over quality for at least some period of time. The reality is, I think as soon as they started to purchase IPs, that was always going to be the case. When they bought Star Wars, they said they were going to make a film a year. They didn't even know what they were going to make. They didn't know what the stories were going to be. They didn't have a plan at that point. They just were saying, we're going to pump out a lot of content and that should make you happy. So Bob now coming back and say, well, now we're going to focus on quality, is just him admitting that the rest of us understand the problem and we are all very aware of the problem, and he needs to at least acknowledge that he knows that we know the problem. But this was one of the first dominoes that led to the death of creativity and innovation at Disney, because now they're not trying to make anything new. They're just trying to find all the old things that people like so that they can recycle them ad nauseum forever. So that gets me to the end of cut number 1. Before I get started, I want to make sure that everybody's very clear on this. I like The Princess and the Frog. It's a good movie. I have no issues with that film. The issue that comes from that film, though, is that it was the last hand-drawn animation film from the Disney studios. Now, as a Disney geek myself, one of the things that you can learn if you go back to Fantasia in particular is that you'll find out that at the core of the Disney company, when they really got into feature film animation, one of the things that they were looking at was the combination of factors that they could use for narrative storytelling. So one of the big things you can learn from watching Fantasia is their ideas of how to use the different elements within the story to tell the story without having to use dialogue. So using color, using music, using movement, using all the different elements that combine to make the film, and that all of these elements are important for storytelling. Now, one of the biggest problems that has happened since Disney gave up hand-drawn animation is that their animation is no longer distinct, not even from other companies, but within their own company. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's difficult for me now to tell the difference between a Pixar film and a Disney Animated Studios film. They look exactly the same. The character renders are very similar. They all have that kind of cherubic, like roundish face. It looks kind of squishy, like they look like they have these marshmallow faces that if you grabbed them, it would just be like meow, 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 meow. And this is all of the animation now, whether it's from Pixar or Disney Studios. So they've lost a bit of that character. This used to be an important factor that they used to give character to their stories. When you think about Hercules, or you think about Lilo and Stitch, or you think about Mulan, or you think about Atlantis, when you envision those movies, I would assume that you can see the different art styles, that you could feel the different art styles. And if you go back and watch them, you will definitely notice there is a very different approach to the animation, a very different approach to the art, a very different feel given to the movie that's supposed to, that aesthetic, it's supposed to add another layer of narrative depth to the story. However, now, since they've moved into computer animation, that's gone. And it's very clear to me that the reason that they've done this is because it removes a kind of annoying step in between. Now they don't need to try so hard. Doing that, creating those different art styles and using those different art styles was effort, and it took time, and it probably took creativity. It probably took innovation. It took people that wanted to do something different. Now, because they don't have to do anything different, now that they can stamp them all out of the same mold, now that the character models basically all look the same, they don't have to try so hard. They can probably pump the things out faster, and it probably costs them less money. One of the areas where this really struck me, where it really popped out, was actually in watching Wreck-It Ralph 2. If you go back, and I'll throw up a couple of the scenes up here, if you go back and watch that scene in Wreck-It Ralph 2 where they brought in all the Disney princesses, it was shocking how the thing that really sets them apart is just their hair and the outfit. That's how you can tell who's supposed to be who. It's no longer, oh, this person looks very distinct. Oh, this person looks very much like this. This looks like Cinderella. This looks like Snow White. It's like, it looks like Snow White because she's wearing the Snow White outfit and she's got the black hair and she's singing the song. And, you know, for whatever reason in that movie, they turned her into an absolute dingbat. But all of the characters have kind of lost some of their personality. Anyways, the point is, it's not that computer animation can't be creative, and it's not that they can't incorporate that same level of detail or that same level of character into the way that they animate computer animation. It's just that they don't. So again, that creative element has now died. And it died with Princess and the Frog. And that's unfortunate because The Princess and the Frog, like I said, it is a good film. And it doesn't deserve to be the one that ended hand-drawn animation at Disney. Just in case anybody wants to throw this out, yes, Wish tried to use some hand-drawn animation. That movie failed not because the hand-drawn animation was brought back. That movie failed because that story was absolute garbage. Okay, just let's be clear on that. So that gets us to the end of cut number 2.
You're not the same as you were before. You were much more muchier. You've lost your muchness.
The live action remakes. Oh, geez. This one's gonna hurt a little bit. So in March of 2010, there was a great disturbance in the forest, and as has been the case so often in recent years, it was all Tim Burton's fault. Now, this is coming from somebody that used to love Tim Burton. I love many of the things he made many, many years ago. Obviously, I'm a big Nightmare Before Christmas fan. I am a big fan of the 1989 Batman. I am a big fan of Edward Scissorhands. I am a big fan of Sleepy Hollow. I know not everybody loves that film, but there are a lot of his movies that I really, really like. Sadly, somewhere along the way, Timmy became a one-trick pony, and his one trick is to make everything dark and weird and stupid for the sake of being dark and weird and stupid, and the main ingredients in his dark and weird and stupid stew is heaps of washed-up Johnny Depp playing Jack Sparrow in different outfits, and Helena Bonham Nutbag playing, surprise, surprise, a nutbag. I am so tired of this trio. I really wish somebody would make them stop. I wish I could just get rid of them. But how?
Oh, I know. I'll turn him into a flea. A harmless little flea. And then I'll put that flea in a box. And then I'll put that box inside of another box. And then I'll nail that box to myself. And when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer.
Anyway, back to the point. Prior to the Alice film, Disney had 3 live-action remakes. One of them they didn't even actually produce themselves. It was something that they purchased and distributed, and that is the original remake of The Jungle Book, the 1994 one, not the more recent one. So again, they didn't produce that. They just purchased it and distributed it. So that one doesn't even really count. There's only 2, which is 101 Dalmatians and 102 Dalmatians. Those are the only 2 live-action remakes they'd had prior to Alice. Now, we should also note that Alice isn't technically a remake. It's kind of a continuation. It's in a weird space, but nevertheless, it keyed Disney into this idea that reusing their old properties, just switching it over into live action, might be lucrative. Now, why do I say that? Because that Alice film made $1 billion. And at that point, that was Disney's second $1 billion film ever. The first being Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, which was released in 2006. So there's very little doubt that when Alice released and ended up making $1 billion, that Disney didn't just see the perfect out to making money endlessly. They were like, hey, that isn't even our most popular property. We have way more popular properties and we can switch them all into live action and we'll just make oodles of the money, right? Wrong. Well, I say wrong. We all know the first couple did make oodles of money, and it pains me to say that they did, but this is the issue. There were two prior to Alice. Now there are 20. So since that time, That's averaging one a year, at least one live action remake a year. And as much as people might want to sit there and say, oh yeah, well, The Lion King made $1 billion and Aladdin made $1 billion and Beauty and the Beast made $1 billion. And obviously this is a very lucrative thing. To those people, I would remind you, they also made Peter Pan and Wendy, and they also made Lady and the Tramp, and they also made Pinocchio. Did you see those in the theater? No, you didn't, because they didn't put them in the theaters. They just chucked them onto Disney Plus. That's how bad they were. So, in the end, this is the third cut. So we've got the purchase of Marvel, and then we've got the death of hand-drawn animation, and now we've got this door opening to, ooh, we can just turn everything into live action, and then we don't need to animate things anymore, and we can just make money forever and ever and ever and ever. And we don't need to be creative anymore. We don't need to try very hard anymore. We don't need to innovate anymore. We can just do that and yeah, be fine. No problem. Yeah, no problem, right? Yeah. Oh, hi Snow White. Oh, bye Snow White. Anyways, moving on to the closing.
It is time.
So to wrap this up, I think it's important to bear in mind that at the time, each one of these things was met with optimism. When Disney first purchased Marvel, a lot of people were excited. When Disney moved into computer animation, a lot of people were excited. When Disney first started making the live action remakes, a lot of people were excited to see what they could do, turning their favorite films into live action versions of those, to see a different version of something that they loved. Had Disney actually respected the thing. Sadly, each of these things has led to greater and greater disappointment over time, and it's because none of it was approached with genuine creativity or innovation in mind, or even the baseline necessary respect for the thing that you were making. And it's even more sad when you realize that not even the financial goal was ultimately met. Because even if you look at Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin or The Lion King and you say, oh, well, these made heaps and heaps of money. Yeah, and how have the more recent ones done? Oh, well, Lilo and Stitch finally brought them back. But what about The Little Mermaid? What about Mulan? What about the 3 films that they just threw onto Disney Plus? And let's not talk about the special child over in the corner. We put her over there. She's resting now. The great herald of all Disney princesses needs a bit of a timeout to recover, okay? So let's not forget that for every success they've had a pretty fantastic bomb to accompany it. Thus, Disney is cutting into their brand trust little by little, and they don't even have the Scrooge McDuck money pool to assure them it was all worth it in the end. So those are my thoughts on the death of creativity and innovation at Disney. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.
His destructive programming is taking effect. He will be irresistibly drawn to large cities where he will back up sewers, reverse street signs, and steal everyone's left shoe.